Hello and welcome to Mongos Consulting YouTube channel. This channel provides tutorials in all areas of language technologies from language learning, through speech and language processing. Please like and subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon to get new video updates. FSI German vocabulary, and basic sentences. English-German parallel audio. Chapter 1. In this video, you will hear an English sentence, and will be required to translate it into German. During the pause, try first by either writing down or speaking loudly the translation before hearing the answer. In order to attain fluency, do not just watch, but participate actively. How do you say good in German?
Guten.
How do you say morning in German?
Morgen.
How do you say good morning in German?
Guten Morgen.
How do you say Mr. in German?
Herr.
How do you say Mr. Becker in German?
Herr Becker.
How do you say good morning, Mr. Becker in German?
Guten Morgen, Herr Becker.
How do you say day in German?
Tag.
How do you say hello, good day in German?
Guten Tag.
How do you say Mrs. in German?
Frau.
How do you say Mrs. Kunz in German?
Frau Kunze.
How do you say hello, Mrs. Kunz in German?
Guten Tag, Frau Kunze.
How do you say evening in German?
Abend.
How do you say good evening in German?
Guten Abend.
How do you say Miss in German?
Fräulein.
How do you say Miss Schneider in German?
Fräulein Schneider.
How do you say good evening, Miss Schneider in German?
Guten Abend, Fräulein Schneider?
How do you say, hello, Miss Schneider, in German?
Guten Tag, Fräulein Schneider.
How do you say, hello, Mr. Becker, in German?
Guten Tag, Herr Becker.
How do you say, how, in German?
Wie?
How do you say, goes, in German?
Geht.
How do you say, it, in German?
Es.
How do you say, to you with you, in German?
Ihnen.
How do you say, how are you? How goes it with you, in German?
Wie geht es Ihnen?
How do you say, thanks, in German?
Danke.
How do you say, very, in German?
Sehr.
How do you say, good, well, in German?
Gut.
How do you say, fine, thanks, in German?
Danke, sehr gut.
How do you say, and, in German?
Und.
How do you say, and how are you, Mr. Becker, in German?
Und wie geht es Ihnen, Herr Becker?
How do you say, also, too, in German?
Auch.
How do you say, thank you, I am fine too, in German?
Danke, auch gut.
How do you say, understand, in German?
Verstehen.
How do you say, you, in German?
Sie.
How do you say, do you understand Mrs. Kunz, in German?
Verstehen Sie Frau Kunze?
How do you say, no, in German?
Nein.
How do you say I in German?
Ich.
How do you say I understand in German?
Ich verstehe.
How do you say not in German?
Nicht.
How do you say no, I don't understand Mrs. Kunz in German?
Nein, ich verstehe Frau Kunze nicht.
How do you say me in German?
Mich.
How do you say do you understand me in German?
Verstehen Sie mich?
How do you say yes in German?
Ja.
How do you say yes, I understand you well in German?
Ja, ich verstehe Sie gut.
How do you say where in German?
Wo?
How do you say is in German?
Ist.
How do you say the airport in German?
Der Flughafen.
How do you say where's the airport in German?
Wo ist der Flughafen?
How do you say there in German?
Dort.
How do you say over there in German?
Drüben.
How do you say the airport is over there in German?
Der Flughafen ist dort drüben.
How do you say please in German?
Bitte.
How do you say I beg your pardon? What did you say in German?
Wie bitte?
How do you say speak in German?
Sprechen.
How do you say slow, slowly in German?
Langsam.
How do you say please speak slowly in German?
Sprechen Sie bitte langsam.
How do you say, "Do you understand," in German?
Verstehen Sie?
How do you say, "Thank you," in German?
Danke schön.
How do you say, "Yes, I understand. Thank you," in German?
Ja, ich verstehe. Danke schön.
How do you say, "You're welcome," in German?
Bitte schön.
How do you say, "That," in German?
Das.
How do you say, "The railroad station," in German?
Der Bahnhof.
How do you say, "Is that the railroad station," in German?
Ist das der Bahnhof?
How do you say, "No, that's not the station," in German?
Nein, das ist nicht der Bahnhof.
How do you say, "He, it," in German?
Er.
How do you say, "To the left," in German?
Links.
How do you say, "It's there to the left," in German?
Ist dort links.
How do you say, "The restaurant," in German?
Das Restaurant.
How do you say, "Is the restaurant there too," in German?
Ist das Restaurant auch dort?
How do you say, "Yes, it's there too," in German?
Ja, es ist auch dort.
How do you say, "What," in German?
Was?
How do you say, "There," in German?
Da.
How do you say, "What's that there," in German?
Was ist das da?
How do you say, "The hotel," in German?
Das Hotel.
How do you say, "That's the hotel," in German?
Das ist das Hotel.
How do you say here in German?
Hier.
How do you say to the right in German?
Rechts.
How do you say the embassy in German?
Die Botschaft.
How do you say is the embassy here to the right in German?
Ist die Botschaft hier rechts?
How do you say she, it in German?
Sie.
How do you say yes, it's here to the right in German?
Ja, sie ist hier rechts.
How do you say excuse me in German?
Verzeihung.
How do you say the cafe in German?
Das Café.
How do you say excuse me, where is the cafe in German?
Verzeihung, wo ist das Café?
How do you say straight ahead in German?
Geradeaus.
How do you say there, straight ahead in German?
Dort, geradeaus.
How do you say the bank in German?
Die Bank.
How do you say isn't it not true in German?
Nicht wahr.
How do you say the bank is there too, isn't it in German?
Die Bank ist auch da, nicht wahr?
How do you say yes, it's there too in German?
Ja, sie ist auch da.
How do you say I would like in German?
Ich möchte.
How do you say with pleasure in German?
Gern.
How do you say I'd like very much in German?
Ich möchte gern.
How do you say some cigars in German?
Zigarren.
How do you say to have in German?
Haben.
How do you say I would like to have some cigars in German?
Ich möchte gern Zigarren haben.
How do you say how many in German?
Wie viele?
How do you say all right? How many in German?
Gern. Wie viele?
How do you say 5 in German?
Fünf.
How do you say some matches in German?
Streichhölzer.
How do you say 5 and some matches too, please, in German?
Fünf, und bitte auch Streichhölzer.
How do you say here you are in German?
Hier, bitte.
How do you say how much in German?
Wie viel?
How do you say costs in German?
Kostet.
How do you say how much does that cost in German?
Wie viel kostet das?
How do you say the cigars in German?
Die Zigarren.
How do you say cost in German?
Kosten.
How do you say two in German?
Zwei.
How do you say Mark in German?
Mark.
How do you say the cigars cost 2 marks in German?
Die Zigarren kosten 2 Mark.
How do you say the matches in German?
Die Streichhölzer.
How do you say 10 in German?
10.
How do you say penny, pennies in German?
Pfennig.
How do you say The matches cost 10 pennies. In German.
Die Streichhölzer kosten 10 Pfennig.
How do you say, would like, in German?
Möchten.
How do you say, would you like, in German?
Möchten Sie?
How do you say, some cigarettes, in German?
Zigaretten.
How do you say, would you like to have some cigarettes too, in German?
Möchten Sie auch Zigaretten haben?
How do you say, they cost, in German?
Sie kosten.
How do you say, yes, how much do they cost, in German?
Ja, wie viel kosten sie?
How do you say, one, in German?
Eine.
How do you say, 1 mark, in German?
Eine Mark.
How do you say, to eat, in German?
Essen.
How do you say, would you like to eat, in German?
Möchten Sie essen?
How do you say, sausage and sauerkraut, in German?
Bratwurst mit Sauerkraut.
How do you say, yes, sausage and sauerkraut please, in German?
Ja, Bratwurst mit Sauerkraut, bitte.
How do you say, some, a little, in German?
Etwas.
How do you say, bread, in German?
Brot.
How do you say, and a little bread, in German?
Und etwas Brot.
How do you say, the wine, in German?
Der Wein.
How do you say, how's the wine, and how's the beer, in German?
Wie ist der Wein und wie ist das Bier?
How do you say, in German?
Sind.
How do you say, The wine and the beer are good. In German.
Der Wein und das Bier sind gut.
How do you say, but, in German?
Aber.
How do you say, the coffee, in German?
Der Kaffee.
How do you say, but the coffee's not good, in German?
Aber der Kaffee ist nicht gut.
How do you say, the tea, in German?
Der Tee.
How do you say, not either, in German?
Auch nicht.
How do you say, and the tea isn't good either, in German?
Und der Tee ist auch nicht gut.
How do you say, the milk, in German?
Die Milch.
How do you say, is the milk good, in German?
Ist die Milch gut?
How do you say, yes, the milk is very good, in German?
Ja, die Milch ist sehr gut.
How do you say, the water, in German?
Das Wasser.
How do you say, how is the water here, in German?
Wie ist hier das Wasser?
How do you say, the water is good, in German?
Das Wasser ist gut.
How do you say, zero, in German?
Null.
How do you say, one, in German?
Eins.
How do you say, three, in German?
Drei.
How do you say, four, in German?
Vier.
How do you say, six, in German?
Sechs.
How do you say, seven, in German?
Sieben.
How do you say, eight, in German?
8.
How do you say 9 in German?
9.
How do you say 11 in German?
11.
How do you say 12 in German?
12.
How do you say how much is 3 and 5 in German?
Wie viel ist 3 und 5?
How do you say 3 and 5 is 8 in German?
3 und 5 ist 8.
How do you say how much is 7 and 4 in German?
Wie viel ist 7 und 4?
How do you say 7 and 4 is 11 in German?
7 und 4 ist 11.
How do you say how much is 2 and 10 in German?
Wie viel ist 2 und 10?
How do you say 2 and 10 is 12 in German?
2 und 10 ist 12.
How do you say again in German?
Nochmal.
How do you say it again, please, in German?
Nochmal, bitte.
How do you say 1, you, in German?
Mann.
How do you say says in German?
Sagt.
How do you say does one say in German?
Sagt man.
How do you say in German, in German?
Auf Deutsch.
How do you say goodbye in German, in German?
Wie sagt man Goodbye auf Deutsch?
How do you say goodbye in German?
Auf Wiedersehen.
How do you say auf Wiedersehen in German?
Man sagt auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you for watching. For comments, suggestions and corrections, get in touch.